Morning.
Yeah. Brian isn't here today.
Oh,
And some gun.
okay.
He has an excuse, absence.
Okay. Did you give him a note? Yes. Yes. It's called a psychological health program. Yeah. Yeah, PHP. And they have a lot of programs. I just don't think. I'm not sure how much people.
Kevin, are we all there? You let me know. Good. Good morning. I will call this meeting to order. I'm Dan, excuse me, I've got a hoarse voice this morning. I'm Dan Wathen, Chairman of the Independent Commission to investigate the facts of the tragedy in Lewiston. I want to begin by thanking University of Maine at Augusta for hosting us once again. And for thank the ASL interpreters. And I want to point out that these proceedings are live streamed and also put on our website, so they're broadly available to the public. The live streaming includes the ASL interpreting for folks who have hearing difficulties. I'll begin by asking the members of the commission to introduce themselves, and to my right.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Gorman, former member of the Law Court.
I'm Deborah Bader. I'm a retired forensic psychologist.
Good morning. I'm Paula Silsby. I'm a former federal prosecutor.
And to my left.
I'm Dr. Anthony Ng. I'm a psychiatrist up in the Bangor area.
Good morning, Jeffrey Rushlow, former district attorney and retired district court judge.
Good morning, Toby Dilworth. I'm a lawyer in Portland.
And the staff with us today.
Good morning. I'm Ann Jordan, the executive director.
I'm Jim Osterreiter, an investigator on staff.
Before we start, I want to just take a moment to address a couple of issues that have become public and covered in the media since our last public meeting. First, on April 30th, the commission was provided a copy of a Portland Police Special Reaction Team After Action Report summarizing the Portland Police Department's involvement in the response to the October 25th shootings in Lewiston. As we do with all of the information presented to us, our staff investigated and the commission reviewed the report, which quite frankly contains some disturbing allegations against certain law enforcement officials who responded that night. The commission agrees that those allegations are not central to the mission that's outlined by the governor and the attorney general, and the allegations are best addressed by the officers' supervisors. However, we did pay particular attention to the information in the report as it pertains to challenges that law enforcement faced in immediately searching the area where Robert Card's vehicle was located, and how those challenges may have complicated the police response and extended the search for Mr. Card. That has been the focus of questioning during previous meetings, and it will be, I predict it will be again during meetings to come. Second, I want to acknowledge that on May 7th, the commission received an official response to our interim report from the attorney for the Saginaw County Sheriff's Sergeant Aaron Schofield, who testified before this commission on January 25th. The commission will consider the points raised in that response as we continue our investigation, and if we feel it's appropriate, we will address those in our final report. As I have said during our previous public meetings, every member of this commission takes the responsibility placed upon us by the governor and attorney general, by the families of those killed and injured on October 25th, and by the people of Maine very extremely seriously. We have been tasked with following the facts wherever they lead and guided only by the pursuit of truth. With that said, I'm now going to turn to our witnesses. This morning, we will hear from James Hurling, the brother-in-law of Robert Card, and Nicole Hurling, the sister of Robert Card. Following their testimony, we will hear from Carol Lamb, Robert Card's ex-wife. We had planned to, at 1 o'clock, by a Zoom, interview Colonel Ochoa, who is in charge of, for the Army, is in charge of the mental health program available to members of the Army Reserve. Unfortunately, the Colonel got bogged down in bad weather in Florida and is going to be on an airplane at the time we planned, so we will reschedule that at a later time. So I want to express the Commission's appreciation for the members of the Card family who are here with us today and your willingness to speak. We also want to acknowledge to you that we know it's not an easy task to hear, and that the spotlight that you've been placed in is not something that you wanted. Nevertheless, you have cooperated with us throughout and at every step of our investigation, and we're very grateful, and we're grateful that you're here today. So with that introduction, Mr. Hurling, you could start off and just state your name and tell us who you are.
Good morning. My name is James Hurling. I am the husband of Nicole Hurling. Brother-in-law to Robert Card II. We extend our sincere gratitude to the Commission for welcoming us back, providing us with this invaluable opportunity to engage with you once again. Together, let us embark on this journey with renewed enthusiasm and determination as we strive to build a brighter future where we can all find hope, a hope and an openness to change, the power to change, and to expect the change that we are all seeking. First, I would like to open with recognizing the loved ones who were lost on October 25th. Our family will never forget your names.
Take your time, there's no rush.
In the legacy they have left. Each of your names are on our wall in our homes. As a constant reminder, as well as they're on our property, so we can see them as we leave home each day and to return home. We have heard their stories, and we will be using them as fuel to help us make this change in this nation. To the survivors and the family members we pass by in our community, we may not recognize each other, but we feel your pain and are here in support of you. There is no way for us to express the sorrow we feel. I am tremendously sorry for the pain that you are going through. When we were here last with my wife and other family members, I wanted to touch base on some personal timeline I experienced and issues our family dealt with that we didn't get to discuss as much during our last meeting. I'd like to note that moving forward, I'll refer Robert Card II as Robbie, the name by which I knew him. And it is the name that his sister used for him. As you know, this tragedy started for us in the beginning of 2023, without us knowing how it would end. I witnessed the exhausting time that my wife had spent meeting with her brother, Ryan, talking on the phone long into the night, desperately trying to figure out what to do. She worked tirelessly, doing investigating work, attempting to gather information from her brother's hearing aid specialist, the suicide hotline, her current employer, and trying to make any contact with someone in the Army Reservist Department, which was seamlessly impossible. Numerous phone calls were never returned or answered. I remember Nikki saying to me that she did not feel it was safe for Robbie to go to drills. She was concerned he may hurt someone and wanted to desperately speak to somebody in the reserve. I told her that we can't stop him from going, and that if something were to happen, I'm sure that they would take care of it, as they are the military. So I thought. It was hard for me as a husband to see this tireless work that she put in trying to get her brother, Robbie, the help that he needed and not accomplish anything. While this was happening, Robbie was pushing all of us away. I will never forget the day Nikki came to me and let me know that her brother Ryan had called her to tell her that Robbie is being taken to an Army hospital and that something had happened. Hearing that he was being taken to the military hospital was sadly a huge relief for us. We thought that he would finally get the care and the help that he needed. We were then informed that he would be in for what we thought was 30 days. We had little information about him being transferred to Four Winds and when he would be released. When Nikki finally learned he was coming home, we were both extremely concerned. At this time, Robbie had totally pushed Nikki away and we were no longer in direct contact with him. Although concerned, we assumed the best regarding of our healthcare system and believed that if they were releasing him, they must have assessed him to be stable and safe. On October 25th, Nikki and I were together in Lewiston Auburn area, running errands while our daughter was attending a dance class. We received a call from the dance studio informing us that they were canceling the class due to a situation and needed to come immediately to pick up our daughter. Uncertain of the circumstance, we heard sirens around in the area and detected the scent of smoke, leading us to speculate about a possible fire. Then we learned that there was an active shooter situation unfolding. Nikki expressed disbelief, wondering who could commit such an act. Meanwhile, I couldn't shake the thought it might be another instance of a culture or hate-based violence. As we proceeded the news, we discovered that an incident occurred at a bowling alley, frequented by friends that we knew. I earnestly reached out to see if they were attending that night. I had found out that they had been in another league and in a different bowling alley. I later learned through this tragedy that we did have other friends that were there as well. We hurried to collect our daughter driving through the city while police cars were rushing past. Upon reaching Lisbon, we retrieved our daughter and attempted to swing into McDonald's, only to find it was closed. Little did we know that we had just passed by where Robbie's car had been found. And where we were at McDonald's across the street from the industrial park where he was found. Later brought the reality of the situation close where we were to him. And we didn't even know. Or we could have just helped him. Arriving home, we informed our other children about the situation and cautioned them to be careful of the interactions with their friends. Then Then we were able to obtain the viewing of the release picture. I found it strangely familiar and couldn't quite understand, but I felt bad for the person who had the evil taken over him. I shared it with Nikki. She looked at it in the picture and was silent. Just seconds later, her brother Ryan called her. She said to me, "It's Ryan," and yelled at me to show her the picture again. It was at that point we just realized who it was.
If you wanna stop at any point, feel free to do so. We have plenty of time. This is very difficult. So feel free to do it as you are able to, okay?
Thank you. Immediately at that time, Nikki got on the phone to communicate to the police force that she identified the shooter to authorities. During this time, the authorities were at disbelief due to the discrepancy of the picture that we were trying to share with them. Meanwhile, when this was happening, my efforts were to try to reach her parents. Proved fear. We couldn't reach them. So we started to hurry to their home while still calling. While this was occurring, Ryan was communicating with us all the possible places while we tried to inform the police of these locations and trying to reach her parents with no answer. During this time also, calls were being dropped while we were talking to the police. Transfers was happening. Seemed so unorganized. Thankfully, when we returned to the home just before we did, her dad picked up. They seemed to be all safe. We found them and we got them to pack up their things, and we brought them and told them to head over to my parents' house for the safety, as we did not know what to expect from Robbie, or even now, the potential expectation of the media. To suggest the importance of, sorry. I would like to suggest the importance of designated family liaisons for suspect families. One is basically unblocked phone numbers to streamline communications amidst the turmoil with any police force. This would help with the distinguishing calls of potential disturbances like harassments or even from media inquiries. This would have helped in many cases and could have prevented a later topic I would love to talk about. After some time during the situation, from the information Ryan had provided to us, he made several attempts in communications with other officers, informing them they needed to search the main recycling trailers. He told them that since Robbie's car was obviously parked at the boat launch where a path connects to main recycling, he was clearly heading for that location because this was the place he used to work and had issues with. It was also a good place for a lot of trailers that were parked near a path where he could hide. He had a gut feeling and he knew where his brother was. Ryan knew his brother. If they had listened more clearly, this would have ended search much sooner, preventing from the fear and the chaos our state and loss of business in our community. He wanted to go look for himself, but they wouldn't let him look. Understandably why, but wish they had just listened more and searched more in the whole park, not just the location they thought the business was in. Later on during the search, my father-in-law also was then reached out to have their property searched and was told that they were going to search the land. They didn't hesitate and agreed to sign the documentations. We understand that they needed to do the search and felt the need for them to do so. But on one of our properties, they had made some damages to and informed us that during the search that they will repair. We have now found out that they will be not covering any of this damage. They also left fencing cut that kept cattle in. If we didn't find this the fence for the cattle to be kept in, the cattle could have escaped and caused an accident on a road. Our family had fully cooperated during this whole event in every way possible. When even reached out for help beforehand and got no help, and after, we've been left alone. The feeling of pain that we have gone through losing Robbie, the pain that he caused, and now the pain of feeling we are taking the punishment of his actions as we did everything and all possible that was right and got left alone. Now, Robbie's son is left with nothing. This isn't something a son should have to go through, especially since he reached out first. Thankfully, he has a mom that still is standing strong, supporting her son and fighting for the help that her son's dad should have gotten. I would like to touch base on my experience and a concern that I have with an officer during the search after October 25th on October 27th. I was putting up trespassing signs because the media was out of control. During this time, a reporter was driving by and I didn't want to talk to them. I said no comment. He proceeded to provoke fear and drove into a driveway that I'd already put cones up and blocked and put no trespassing signs in the driveway. He then backed out into the main road and almost caused an accident while pulling out and almost hitting me. I was frustrated, tried to videotape him as he pulled away. I proceeded to just let this go. I was finding out that this was what we were dealing with. He later then returned and proceeded to park on the main road where it is illegal to park due to there's no soldier room. I yelled at him that he should move on, He was on his phone. I called the police and they assured me that somebody was en route. I then saw what seemed to be the media guys called for more media guys to make a statement. This seemed to be happening constantly. The media would come in frenzies and with each other. Several of them set up and proceeded to take pictures of my in-laws' house. This was not Robbie's house. This was my in-laws' house. The officers showed up. As I could see from afar, I walked toward the scene, and the officer then came to me after allowing the media to set up the cameras on the busy road and take shots. He then proceeded to me and informed me his body camera was on and approached me and then introduced himself. I then realized who he was, and I said, "Yes, I know who you are." He then replied to me, "What does that mean?" I said, "Nothing, I just know who you are." I explained my concern in the issue and recognized the situation and asked me where I was from. I told him I was from Durham. He then basically told me that I am not a local resident and that he couldn't do anything. This went on and he gave me a statement asking me, "What do you want me to do? Go and spend several hours writing up a report on this guy, wasting time, or search for Robbie?" At that point, I knew I was going nowhere with him. I backed off and said, of course, I want to find him. I would hope that this video that he says he was recording could be seen for the proof of what this officer did, putting me into a situation. 2 other Card family members were there as well and witnessed this. The officer then went on to inform me that he needed to return to another scene and that he came from and needed to get back to it. After I walked away, he didn't leave for quite some time. I was confused by this as he said he had to return, yet stayed. My concern is that this officer was Schofield, the same officer that was supposed to make contact with my brother-in-law, Robbie, in regarding to seizing his weapons. He also never made any physical contact with Ryan or any of us family members, besides seeing my father-in-law, not explaining the situation of why he was looking for him, but just to say, "I'm looking for Ryan." Communications was only done over the phone with Ryan. If this is the proper training for any officer, this doesn't seem right. The approach of the officer Schofield took, from my perspective, made me feel guilty and avoided pressing matters. While it also is not my story to tell about how Schofield was communicating with Ryan regarding the confiscation of the guns, I do know that Ryan was trying to get the help from him on what to try and say to Robbie so he could work together. Ryan informed us that Officer Schofield kept pushing for him to tell him that he got the guns and that he said he needed to get them because he wanted to finish this up just so he could be able to get on vacation. Ryan had no way to get onto the property as Robbie and his relationship had been strained for months now. So additionally now, we were never informed about the threats to the shootout about the Saco Army base, myself or my wife, Nikki. It is concerning that during these hearings that Schofield had mentioned also about a topic that the commission had asked a question. During this time, he answered, he is just a patrol officer. So my question is, why is an officer who is just a patrol officer in charge of trying to secure weapons from a person, the only one to be able to take the guys, we were having a hard time and we couldn't get any confrontation and an ability to accomplish this task. Ryan had offered fully cooperation and said he could do whatever he could to get the guns, not that he would be able to get them. That he should They should have been able to take this as a way to just, I believe that Schofield took this as a way to be able to just leave it with us. Along with this, there was no reaching back to confirm if the guns were taken. Hence the reason why we had reached out for help. No follow-up was done. So when you feel you are getting the help from the police, we tend to feel lost when you don't get to and you don't know what to do next. Another situation I would like to also be able to touch on is the situation that occurred at my parents' home, where my family and my mother-in-law were staying at the time due to our concern with the situation with Robbie on the run and hiding from the media. During the second day, my wife and I had left and were heading over to talk with our bosses to go over the situation with our family was in. We were naturally concerned about losing our jobs. My wife was also preparing to do a statement of an outcry publicly to call out to Robbie if he was listening to turn himself in. On our way, we saw cops flying by. They were on a hot pursuit. We called our family and told them that we just saw the cops go by and there was possibly some news coming. We proceeded to go meet with our bosses. As we sat down, our daughter called us to inform that the police were at my parents' property. We were confused as to why they showed up there. They came up, approaching some of our children who were outside cleaning the yard as they had a SWAT team approach them with guns drawn. Apparently, a 911 call came from one of our phones without us knowing. My concern is not that they came with guns drawn. My concern is that during this whole situation, we did not receive any protection or even an officer around in the case Robbie would have tried to contact us. My other concern is that when my wife and I showed up, we couldn't even get to our family, not because of the large amount of police force, but because of the high amount of personnel, media that was blocking the roadway. If this had been an actual situation, there would have been no way for any emergency personnel to get in, as the media were blocking the entire area. The media say they are there for the safety of others, when in reality, it seemed so chaos. We had to park down the road at our neighbor's house and walk through the woods to get to our family. Once we got there, we were approached by the officers, and I asked a question: who is in charge? To my shock, I got a response that I didn't expect. They all looked confused. And one of the guys said, well, you could speak to him. When we spoke to that guy we referred to, he sent us to another person. Why did a group of officers who came to protect and serve had no idea who is in charge? I was also informed by my parents that the officers were not sure when they had arrived if they should search the house. My parents had asked specifically for the officers to do so to search the house. I found it a bit odd that they would show up and not feel as if they needed to search the premises. I later know that you probably need a search warrant as well. This was something that really concerned me, though. Later, we found out that no detectives had spoken to my mother-in-law. During this time, when the detectives showed up, 4 Homeland Security officers stayed and provided safety and comfort and spoke with our younger daughter. We later found out that these men were also part of the Boston tragedy in 2013 and voiced how much bigger presence of officers was in this area while they were in Boston. They also expressed to us how little direction there was in the current event. This was concerning to hear, since we had people all over our state, along with people from all over our nation, like coming from Connecticut, trying to help. At the onset of this tragedy, when information was being first released, we began to receive threatening calls. I immediately called the Androscoggin Sheriff's Department to report these calls. The responses to me was there's nothing that they could do and that no one could provide security. So my question would be, after hearing about all the reports of so much police presence, so that we're waiting, that so many of them were waiting in Lewiston High School rooms, they didn't know where to put them. Why was my family unable to access just one patrol officer? It felt like our family didn't matter, especially when others around the state were provided protection. We were scared. We didn't know what more to expect from Robbie. And now we were getting these threats of harassment. And in addition to the nonstop calls of texts of reporters who refused to respect our privacy. For the media, you say that you are for the people and the safety of the people, when in fact there was so much fear and danger you put into the people. To this day, you are getting information wrong and need to fact check your own work. It has taken months for you to get Robbie's name correct. It is Robert Card II. So it wouldn't lead to any confusion with others. Also, the huge number of recorders blocking routes and created additional chaos for emergency responders dealing with critical care and delaying response time. For example, also during the search of my in-laws' house, the media had the road so blocked, viewers watching can see clearly the difficulty the SWAT team had to get past on the main road in Bowdoin. It looked like a movie staged scene. There must be more control of the media access during tragic events so that police force can do their job. This is one reason why I believe the force had such a difficult time in getting things done. I can only imagine the frustration they experienced considering what we had to go through. Once everything settled down, after they found Robbie, it felt like we were starting to be left behind. It became much harder to get any information. My wife met with a liaison at the end who gave her just some information, but it was just a sheet of names and places. It was no help when we couldn't reach anyone and no one would return any calls. Maine, our state, is in a current crisis, not from just what happened in Lewiston, even prior to. Seeking for help with counseling is difficult to find. When someone is seeking for counseling, it is needed at that time, not to wait. It has taken our family months to get any counseling assistance. It was unfortunately likely enough for me to find someone just because I already knew the person. To one point that one of our members had to wait over 3 months, and our youngest has just started this past Monday. If it wasn't for our children's schools during this time and for the school counselors, our children probably wouldn't be doing as well as they are now. I also would like to mention our deepest appreciation for the way they stepped up and welcomed our kids back to school that following Monday. They quickly made a plan and kept our school rolling, dealing with the unthinkable and helping all children in the community feel safe and loved. To our community, you really showed why I'm so happy to be a Mainer and part of this community that I grew up in. The love and support shown was truly a blessing to our family. To that point, 2 strangers came by to drop off roses during a time when my mother-in-law was having a terrible hard time. Your timing and flowers couldn't have been more perfect. Also to the survivor that stopped by and saw my wife and talked with her. Thank you. I would like to also mention the Prince of Peace of Parish of Lewiston. Thank you for your truly being the pure light God has asked us to be. Your love and comfort are what God has created us to be. to our friends and family as well for all that you have done in supporting our children and family. If you were to ask me what one thing that I would like for the commission to find and point out, it would be ultimately to get to the root cause of this tragedy. We can point fingers of who's at fault, who has failed to make the ultimate contact. But in all reality, we all could have done better, from the sheriff office to the army to the family. In order for us to be able to move forward, we need to know what could have been done. But in reality, just like a weed in a garden, we haven't taken care of the weed if we just rip it off. What we see from the top, and I think that think that it's taken care of. We need to get down deep into the root of the weed and remove it so it won't come back again. Yes, we must remove guns. And yes, confrontation and connection with someone that is all at the surface of the weed. But in order to prevent this from occurring again, we must get to the root and remove it completely so it won't spread. We have discovered that Robbie had a severe traumatic brain injury. One of the worst researchers have even seen from active military personnel that have served even in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, he was not an active soldier. He was a reservist. Regardless of whether you are active or reservist, all soldiers go through the same training process. Medical results have concluded that Robbie had a TBI, traumatic brain injury, that was caused by our own military, not by being in war. His brain was not healthy, and no one knew. He was going through so much in life that his injured brain had no way to function because he failed to get the essential protection that he should have gotten. These soldiers serve to defend our nation and protect the freedom we have. Why don't our soldiers get the protection they deserve? The shirt that I am wearing today in this mental awareness month is to bring the awareness of the focus we need to bring towards this root, the root of which that we must do more to protect our service men and women. They have fought for us. Now we must fight for them. I am hoping that this commission will find that the DoD needs to enhance the protection of our soldiers, because when they release them as civilians, they are releasing them without proper care. This is not an excuse for the behavior and action that Robbie committed. It was a wrongful act of evil. My brother-in-law was not this man. His brain was hijacked. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hurley. I'm not sure. Would you and your wife like to wait until she's presented and then have questions if the commission has any questions, or do you want to be questioned now?
Whatever works best for you. And if
Well,
it's on your mind
I'm
right
more
now. if you're
concerned
thinking
about you. Would you want to proceed? Why don't we do it that way? And you are Nicole Hurley.
Yes. Hello. I'm Nikki Hurling, sister of Robert Card II. On behalf of my family, I want to express our deepest apologies for the pain and suffering caused by Robbie's actions on the night of October 25th, 2023. We've agonized over our memories, searching for any signs or actions that could have prevented the tragedy in Lewiston. If we appeared silent, it wasn't because we lacked empathy. We were in shock and disbelief, unable to comprehend that Robbie was capable of such horror. We've hesitated to speak out, mindful of the need to give survivors and victims' families space to heal. Often, I've found myself grappling for the right words, unsure if any could be adequate. Each news report seemed to reopen wounds, and we were adamant about not adding to anyone's pain. If our silence caused pain for some of you, I'm truly sorry. Please know that our thoughts and prayers have consistently been with you, the victims' families, survivors, and all affected by this tragedy. As Mainers, we've closely felt the ripple effects of this anguish throughout our state and nation. I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to everyone who played a role in keeping people safe and bringing an end to the manhunt by finding Robbie. There were countless heroes in this story, and I feel that if I name individuals, I might unintentionally overlook someone who made an equally significant contribution, whether it was instilling a sense of hope and safety in your family, providing aid to those physically or mentally harmed, or tirelessly working to locate and restore peace in our frightened communities. I am profoundly thankful for every person who showed love and support when our communities were shaken. My gratitude extends to the victims, advocates, and translators who sought to comfort those deeply affected in our community. Thank you to everyone who has generously stepped up financially to alleviate the burdens of families who lost loved ones, endured injuries, or suffered from lost work or revenue to the widespread closures. I want to extend my appreciation to the Maine Resiliency Center for their ongoing healing efforts. This journey is far from over. There are still individuals experiencing agonizing pain, and your support is invaluable. I want to send a heartfelt thank you to the medical examiners and the state police for conducting a thorough investigation, and to the funeral homes for providing unwavering support to numerous families during such emotional, taxing times. I'm so grateful for the social workers, counselors, and schools who have offered crucial emotional support. And I appreciate therapy dogs who have donated their time to the aid of the healing process. Countless individuals answered the call to action to help. And for that, I am sincerely grateful. May God bless each and every one of you. I am grateful for the unity and growth we've experienced over the last 6.5 months. I hope to provide some insight to the public, as my initial interview was conducted in private. However, witnessing the bravery and speaking publicly has inspired me. However, witnessing others' bravery and speaking publicly has inspired me to challenge myself to grow through discomfort as well. Thank you for your courage. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude for the dedicated efforts that the members of the commission have made in investigating this tragedy from the beginning to the end. seeking ways our state can improve such circumstances. I deeply appreciate and am committed to being part of the change that emerges from your findings. Thank you for your precious service to our state. Instead of reiterating my testimony on the past year of coping with Robbie's paranoia, I want to reflect on my experiences and pinpoint areas within our community and state that demand action to change. These issues shaped my own encounters, need to be heard. I've engaged with the police, military, and the commission, and the reports from those interactions will be released. Today, I aim to provide feedback on what I perceive to be systemic failures and delve into the underlying issues from my perspective. It is challenging to address all these issues. However, these were the most challenging for me. Firstly, I acknowledge my responsibility as Robbie's sister. I wish I had done everything in my power to get him the help he needed. My pride prevented me from seeking help after facing rejection. Instead, I would feel defeated and withdraw until the next crisis emerged. Looking back, my biggest mistake was not insisting on help, not driving to the base or to the hospital in New York to be with him, not going to his house at 10:30 at night to support him when he texted me. If you loved me, you would help. You would find who these people are online saying these awful things about me. He didn't believe me when I said he was sick, not crazy. Reflecting on what I could have done differently consumed me, rendering me useless to those around me. Thankfully, through prayer and strength, have enabled me to heed the call. My call to action is to seek help without shame, realizing I have nothing to lose. Hear my battle cry today, and please support me in this journey. This is my call to action. I found accessing my brother's chain of command to be a significant challenge. Despite exhaustive online searches, I couldn't find clear information on where to report my concerns. The information I did come across was outdated, and despite leaving numerous voicemails, none were returned. I am unsure if the VA Crisis Helpline is equipped to handle such data to aid families dealing with crises like ours, involving their loved ones, but such support would be invaluable in our future. I felt deeply troubled and felt helpless on June 3rd, 2023, when a VA crisis worker advised me to not inform the command about my brother's delusions of being called gay or a pedophile. While I didn't believe these accusations to be true, the thought of him potentially facing harassment or differential treatment due to these accusations was distressing. It left me even more concerned about my brother's safety, with nowhere to turn. I grappled with the dilemma of how to disclose the situation without revealing the full truth, and the fear of what might happen if the accusations were true. And he faced further mistreatment weighed heavily on me. I needed a safe haven on May 3rd, 2023, that operated around the clock. For instance, on Wednesday evening at 6:30, while trying to comprehend this confusing situation. I wished for a place where I could seek counsel to take my brother for evaluation without resorting to the traumatic experience of the emergency department. I believe the Maine Resiliency Center could serve as a solution for such needs. It is crucial to maintain funding to ensure the continued operation and accessibility of such vital service for people in crisis. I am immensely grateful for what our state senators senators recognize the value of this program and to continue to fund it. I want to address something that has been confirmed following investigations. Robbie was indeed facing harassment from coworkers who mistakenly identified a name on the sex offender list that closely matched his age. Despite my efforts, I didn't expand my search wide enough to discover this until October 25th, when that same person had been mistakenly identified as R. Robert Card II during the manhunt. While it's unclear whether this revelation would have changed the outcome, given Robbie's heightened paranoia and stress exacerbated by his new hearing aids, it highlights the pervasive issue of bullying and harassment in workplaces everywhere. Just last Tuesday, I heard of another abuse of power in a workplace. It's frustrating that people don't consider how their actions can impact the livelihood of others, leading to feelings of hopelessness, isolation, and depression. I witness this far too often. I call employers and employees to action, to show boldness in our workplaces, putting an end to the crime of harassment through reporting and adopting a zero-tolerance stance. This is a call to action. I encourage everyone to reflect on the power of kindness. Each of us is battling battles unknown to others, and your kindness could be the spark for positive change in someone's life, even if for a moment or a day. Let us strive to be agents of change, actively working to eliminate workplace bullying and foster environments of compassion and understanding. The Army is well aware of this next urgent issue. An investigator revealed that once an Army reservist transitions to civilian life, if it's after a drill, their command loses control over them, a situation that seems unreasonable given their training. The pervasive culture of toughness and stigma surrounding seeking help exasperates the problem. Additionally, the impact of our own training on soldiers' mental health is deeply concerning. Senators highlight that 75% troops blast exposure come from their own weapons. Soldiers endure symptoms including headaches, insomnia, confusion, memory loss, balance issues, racing hearts, paranoia, depression, and emotional outburst. The revelation that the Department of Defense nearly treated 50,000 soldiers for traumatic brain injury in 2023 is alarming. And it raises questions about why this information isn't more widely known. Had Rob or his unit recognized the signs and symptoms, they could have intervened differently. Robbie's fear of appearing mentally unstable likely exacerbated his condition. It's imperative to ensure that such injuries aren't concealed to protect the military's image. which is why I support the Blast Overpressure Safety Act. Blast overpressure is the pressure caused by a shock wave above normal atmospheric pressure. And it is most commonly caused by explosions or sonic booms. This type of exposure can happen during combat, but they are finding it among our soldiers who have never served in combat, only training of this type of weaponry. This legislation aims to address blast overpressure by implementing measures to safeguard service members from its effects, acknowledging its prevalence and impact on their well-being. Robbie faced potential exposure to shock waves, around 180 per season, during the last 9 years of training cadets at West Point. I've heard that he could have been exposed to up to 1,000. The exact frequency remains unclear, with no records documenting our soldiers detonating these weapons, only if the weapons successfully detonate. However, it's significant to note that leading neuropathologists from Boston University was particularly intrigued by Robbie's case. Despite never serving in combat, his brain injury was more severe than those typically observed in combat veterans injured in wars like Afghanistan and Iraq by IEDs. Blast overpressure is a grave concern leading to tragic outcome of Robbie's incident, but frequently results in our soldiers' suicides. An Army investigator emphasized to me that had my brother not been involved in the deaths of 18 people, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This moment ignited a mission within me to uncover the deeper meaning behind his death and the death of the 18 others. Learning about the extent of his brain damage only solidified my resolve to assist other soldiers and their families grappling with similar struggles. The harsh reality is that 17 soldiers die by suicide a day. A day. With those suffering with traumatic brain injury being twice as likely to take their own lives. I'm thankful to Senator Collins and King, who promptly joined Senators Warren and Ernst in safeguarding the well-being of our service members' brains. Your actions offer a measure of justice to me and my family. Though we cannot undo Robbie's tragedy, we can leverage this experience to spotlight the danger of brain injury for soldiers and their families. The Department of Defense's negligence regarding traumatic brain injury must be addressed, and they must be held accountable for change. This is a call to action. It's important to acknowledge that Robbie's decline involved other factors, and I'm not here to excuse his behavior. However, it's vital to understand that not everyone with this type of brain injury exhibits dangerous behavior like Robbie did. We anticipate the forensic psychology results from Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, which will provide valuable insights for the Maine community and offer solace to soldiers and families exposed to similar low-level blasts like those experienced during Robbie's cadet training at West Point. For 16 years, a dedicated group of tirelessly advocated for awareness of this issue. Their recommendation is clear. destigmatize mental health in the military, and educate soldiers about TBI, CTE, and PTSD, and encourage brain donation for research. I urge those with loved ones in the military to support them in seeking help. If you know a soldier, please ask them to consider a brain donation for traumatic brain injury research through projectenlist.org. Let's join the 2,000 veterans who have pledged to donate their brain and make a difference together. Spread the word to help change history. This is a call to action. If you know someone who is at risk of suicide, call the crisis line at 988. Press 1 for the Veteran Crisis Line. Your life matters, and you are loved. To support someone struggling, keep showing you hear them. A call, a text, a letter, a helping hand can make a difference. Reflecting on Robbie's struggles, I wish I would have made more time just to be there. I wish I would have stopped everything and gone fishing. Let's pause our busy lives and show love to those in pain through fishing or any act of kindness. It's a call to action. Reflecting on the events of October 25th and the following days, I was troubled by the lack of respect between police agencies. In moments of crisis, realizing the system you depend on is fragmented due to internal pride and ego is disheartening. We must prioritize collaboration and unity over individual agency pride to bring about positive change. Witnessing this lack of cohesion among agencies contradicted the admiration and respect we were taught to have for the police from a young age. Respectfully, it's time for an ego check. And this is a call to action. On a related note, I strongly believe that the police departments, like Brunswick Police, should prioritize integrating mental health support into their services. Having a crisis counselor readily available can be invaluable in addressing the underlying issues behind criminal activity or welfare checks, including substance abuse and mental health struggles. This proactive approach not only benefits the individuals involved, but also contributes to the overall well-being of the community. Reflecting on the situation with Schofield, I can't help but wonder if having such support available could have made a difference. It's an emotional reminder of the importance of ensuring the mental health resources are accessible and integrated within law enforcement agencies to better serve both police officers and the community. We need a more collaborative effort between the police force and mental health professionals. This is a call to action. Given Maine's significant shortage of mental health specialists, I urge our state to explore innovative solutions to attract and retain these crucial professionals. One glaring issue I've observed is the high rates of burnout and low pay in the field. Can we increase salaries and provide more paid time off to alleviate this burden? Can we offer financial assistance for schooling in exchange for a commitment to work in Maine or for a certain amount of years? Can we offer an incentive to stay and explore a beautiful state? Maine has a lot to offer. While I may not have the answers, I firmly believe that through collaboration and creativity, we can find effective solutions. Maine has made decisions that necessitate greater accountability from Maine health specialists, and we must act swiftly to bolster our workforce. Maine, this is a call to action. I'm going to be bold here and issue another call to action. If you are feeling unfulfilled in your current position, consider joining us in the Maine mental health profession. And if you're passionate about your work, continue serving your community with dedication. Ultimately, it's up to each of us to shift our perspectives and contribute to positive change in our state. Together, we can build a stronger, more resilient mental health support system for all. Now, turning my thoughts to the manhunt. I understand now from other reports through the commission that there were various reasons why tracking and searching for Robbie had been so challenging. I trust these issues will be highlighted in the final report and everyone will collaborate to improve the process in the future. Should such unfortunate circumstances arise again. It's important to note that my mother or father were not interviewed until Friday, the 27th. And despite the uncertainty surrounding Robbie's whereabouts and potential danger to my parents, our family was not offered any protection. While I'm immensely grateful for everyone's efforts during the shooting and the aftermath, I'm bringing these concerns to light to ensure they are addressed in the future, particularly in the case of a family who chooses to harbor a fugitive. This is a call to action. To the FBI and the officers who obtained releases from my brother Ryan and my father to enter their properties. It was necessary to repair the damages, and I understand the need for such actions if they hadn't agreed or allowed entry or disclose Robbie's potential hiding spots. However, they would have willingly assisted in the search. If destruction was necessary, compensation for the damages is only fair. Witnessing police cutting wires to my father's pastures, repaired by a neighbor in the dark after seeing it on live TV, was disheartening. The lack of communication and treating my family as criminals despite their cooperation is unacceptable. FBI, this is a call to action. There's potential growth, and I acknowledge that people did their best amidst the October 25th to the 27th. Yet I must address the media. Your actions are harmful, your motives misguided. Remember, hurt people hurt people. I implore you, treat others as you'd want yourself and your family to be treated. This is a call to action. In conclusion, I'm grateful for the chance to speak today. Thank you. Here, I've brought the very helmet meant to safeguard my brother's brain to the Department of Defense. It failed. It's been failing. It's unjust to continue trainings with explosions and sonic booms until there are protective gear and standards ensuring the safety of all our soldiers' brains. I won't relent until these changes happen. I pray the Maine community stands with me. Mainers, I urge you to join me for rising over brokenness and joining our mission to advocate for soldiers' brain health. They fought for us. Now we fight for them. This is our call to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it may be a good time, excuse me. Maybe a good time to take maybe a 10-minute break and come back, and if the commission has questions for both of you, we'll attend to it at that time. I just want to, first of all, ask you, if before you leave your written statements with with Ann. We have access to the video and all of that, but it's nice to see it in writing, and we appreciate it. And the other thing I want to say at this point is you both have made reference to the fact that we met earlier with the commission in private. I think before we held our first investigative hearing, you were the first folks that we met with. And it's really striking to me how much thought is evident from our meeting then and our meeting today. Today you've been powerful, you've been thoughtful, and you've really laid the burden on us to do something that is meaningful in this tragedy. So I want to thank you for it. And let's take a 15-minute break, and we'll come back, and if there are questions, and then we'll continue on.
Thank you.
We'll stand aside.
Turning into my grandmother. Tissues packed up nicely. Yeah, but how long have you been?
Are we all set, Kevin? Yes, we must be. I'm on. I hear the sound. Okay, we will resume. And once again, thank you. And we now may have questions from members of the commission. So are there any questions? Start with that end.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, Mr. and Mrs. Froling, for your testimony here today and your cooperation throughout the commission's work.
My pleasure.
Mrs. Froling, you've referenced efforts that you made to get your brother help through contacts with various entities involved in the military. It would be very helpful if you could detail those for us this morning.
So the contacts that I had attempted to reach out to, the woman that I spoke with the second time I called the crisis line.
Could you
Oh,
move the microphone
sure.
just a?
Can you hear me now? So the woman that I spoke to on June 2nd, for the crisis line, had given me a list of people to try to call. I think that the information that was on the website at the time was the Auburn Battalion, when they were back in Auburn. I guess that was several years ago. So I had looked up.
Can I interrupt you one moment? When you say the crisis line, what specific crisis line was that? Was it a military crisis line? Was it a state crisis line?
So it's 988. And then when you call that, I learned that you can press 1 to speak to veterans, specifically for veteran crisis.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And so she kind of guided me through different things that I could do, where at that point he hadn't threatened to hurt himself or anybody else. Oops. Oh, no. Some of the places, it felt like every time a crisis happened, it would be on the weekend, and they were not open or available. But give an hour was one option. So you can give an hour of counseling services to somebody, and in return give a gift that you have. I tried calling the Saco Battalion and left a message at all 5 of their voicemails.
And what was the nature of the message you left?
That I had a concern regarding my brother. And I kept it very vague on the phone because I wasn't really sure who I was trying to reach out to at that time. And that I needed support finding his commanding officer, the chain of command.
Did you identify your brother in those voicemail messages?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're ridiculous options. One's like the MP. So I tried reaching them. After the shooting, I tried those numbers again, and the resource officer, and not resource, but the education person, I think it's like option 5, is the only one that returned my call. And in fact, he was under investigation for returning my call at that point. So I was hoping to find a chaplain when I was looking for somebody on the Saco base. She had told me that they're always available and it's confidential. And I don't want to discredit 988, the veteran line that I spoke to. Both of the people that I spoke to were very compassionate. They tried their best to direct me in a way that I could support Robbie in getting help. they did something called a cold call. So they knew that Robbie was coming up for retirement. And so one way of contacting them, so they're just like, hey, your sister called, she's worried about me. They said, hey, let me give him a cold call. I'll just say, hey, notice that you're coming up for retirement. Is there any concerns that you have? How can we support you? I did try to receive these transcripts. And these are the ones that we spoke about that had been, they were not available because they were not recording that weekend. They were doing a system upgrade. So that would have been really helpful. Not that they did anything that was not helpful, but it was like, we need to learn from this so we can give information better, so I could reach somebody. So that was the SACO unit. You know, both of my brothers served in the military, and I have to say I'm ignorant to the command chain, to everything. I did not serve. I just didn't pay attention to it. I just knew I loved them and I was proud of them for what they were doing. So like the whole system, I was learning this as I was going as of May. And I think the story would have been different if Robbie had a wife or a next of kin that was more able to deal with this type of complication, you know, like, a lot of people couldn't talk to me because I was not his wife or his next of kin. That made it really challenging, but, they had given me a list and tons of resources. However, I have a big list here. The Army Reserve Crisis Program, I believe I called them and they were not available on the weekend. They closed like on Friday at 5. And then the VA could not help us because Robbie was not a veteran at that time, which is challenging to think about.
So at any time that you were dealing with the Army, did they offer you any information about the psychological health program?
No,
Have you ever heard of that program that's
No.
available specifically for Army reservists suffering behavioral health issues in their families?
no.
That wasn't part of the resources listed.
Not that I know of. I had Military One Source, so it was a counseling. I decided not to contact that because it would have been open to the chain of command. And she had previously told me that if he had been seen, if they knew that he was a pedophile or gay, that he would receive poor treatment, possibly being bullied or retaliated against. So I decided not to call somewhere where they would have records of that in the command. Military One Source, Coaching into Care, which was for families. I reviewed that website several times. Give an Hour and the SACO Chain of Command. Those are the ones that I contacted or looked into.
Did you obtain the name of the person you spoke with who advised you not to let the command know that your brother was a pedophile or gay?
April.
April?
And she's from the VA.
Yeah.
You contacted her through the 988 number?
Yep, 988, and then you press 1 to reach the veteran. hotline.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I saw pretty much everybody had their hand up, so we'll just work our way down.
Hi, and thank you so much. Very powerful words, statements. Thank you. I did take note of, it appeared in your remarks that you and your family have been in somewhat regular contact with a neuropathologist or Boston University. Is that right?
I've had 2 meetings with her, and her assistant has been really great at working. They have a concussion legacy fund foundation that we're hoping to jump on board with. So we've been talking about what we can do. And then the Project Enlist is another program that the Boston University works with to donate brains to the bank. So we've been talking about her keeping Rob's brain for research.
Yeah.
And she said that she would keep us posted on anything that she finds pertaining to that. So we've had 2 meetings and then emails going back and forth.
Was it in the course of those communications that they expressed the severity of his TBI, that it was worse than even some combat veterans? Was
Yes,
it,
ma'am.
okay, those folks at Boston University?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was the
And
first
can you,
thing- That was the first thing that they had brought up.
That was March 1st.
That was with them.
wow, okay.
That's how she basically opened it.
Hmm. Thank you. And what's happening at Walter Reed?
So I say I have given them an interview for, well, they also have the records from Boston University. We released them to them. My hope is that they're going to utilize them to share what they find. And I think it's what you are, a forensic psychologist. Yeah. So we had an interview with those. I'm finishing that next week. And so
So are they sort of doing a psychological autopsy essentially?
I believe
at
so,
Walter
yeah.
Reed? Okay.
that's my
And-
understanding.
Oh, that's interesting. And when, do you have any sense of when that's happening? You might have just said it, and sorry.
Well, I just know that I started the conversation last week. And they're just trying to figure out and find patterns that happened with Rob that may have happened with other people to kind of identify, say, if a sister calls and is asking for support due to paranoia, they're going to say, look here. So using that information, from our experience, they did his childhood. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week, but that's to be continued. So we're going to work on post.
Yes. And did they reach out to
May
you?
3rd.
Or did you guys reach out to them?
They reached out to us. The suicide investigator that we've been working with through the Army had connected us.
And that's the suicide investigator that basically said, had he not killed
Mhm.
18 people, then.
And I know that that's powerful. I mean, it's the truth. And I don't think that was meant. He's worked very kindly along with us in other aspects, connecting us with people. It's the truth. I mean, we're losing 17 veterans a day. Back in 2017, it was 22. So we're getting better, but we're not where we need to be. Not for the people that are serving us and
Yeah.
fighting for us. So, his job is essentially to investigate suicides. And I guess it would be impossible to investigate 17 suicides a day, but this is why we need brains donated through Project Enlist. So we can see, I guess last year, I thought it was a brain tumor we were dealing with. Thought it was a health issue. He lost a lot of weight. I knew something wasn't right. After the shooting, I knew something was terribly wrong. Something had to be extremely wrong. So when the medical examiner reached out to us and said, hey, we're sending the brain to Boston University for more testing. You don't really have a choice to do this, but we believe that he has CTE. I've had 5 researchers reach out to me. This is what we're looking at. We're like, okay. I knew, and I prayed for a miracle at that point to give us answers. There's tragedies that happen every day and people never discover. So I do feel grateful that we have been able to pinpoint and have actual evidence to prove that his pathways were so tethered and torn. And when your brain is not able to reconnect these pathways, we need to do research on this. We need to get these pathways reconnected. I don't know, but I think Dr. McKee at Boston University is the best way. She's been working on this for 16 years. In the last 10 years, we've come the furthest than they have even with Alzheimer's. So to me, it's a no-brainer. We got to hone in on this, and we have absolutely got to do things differently. I don't want another family, another sister, a spouse. I mean, I'm a sister. We're talking about spouses and family members, sons, daughters, fathers, mothers. that lose connections with their children on this earth. One father that I listened to, who lost his son to suicide, and he has fought because he said, I know this is not my son. You know, what did his brain look like? Where are these disconnections coming from? We're talking about PTSD. We're talking about CTE. We're talking about traumatic brain injury. We're talking about brain health. We're doing this to our own soldiers, our men of the fittest of ages, and they're leaving their families and their children neglected through their emotional pain and tragedy. We can't let this happen anymore. It's going to be a generational trickle effect that's going to cause chaos, hate, and despair in our country.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Can I just ask you to stay in touch with, we are looking to do it, well, we're going to do a final report, obviously. We're looking to do that by midsummer. But if you get information from Walter Reed, in a report from Walter Reed, whatever comes, whatever the end result of that is, if you could stay in touch with Ann Jordan about that, that would be super helpful.
Of course. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Again, thank you both for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
At any point before October 25th, did you have any contact with any of Robbie's battalion comrades? Anyone reach out to you from the Army Reserve?
Yeah, yes. Well, I reached out to Sean Hodgson and June 3rd.
June 3rd?
June 3rd, yep.
Okay. And what did you tell him? What did he tell you?
It was the situation where Robbie had gone up to a few ladies at the bowling alley. I believe Ryan had called me with his concerns because he texted Ryan and said, hey, I got validation. I just told these ladies to stop talking about me. Apparently this delusion was that he was rich. And they got up and walked away. So it goes to show these people are saying these things and I'm going to stand up for myself. And Ryan contacted me. He said, Nikki, Rob's been messaging me all night. Yeah, it was in the middle. When he did these messages with Ryan or Colby, it was in the middle of the night because he was a CDL truck driver. And so he was traveling during the night. So Ryan reached out to me. And then that was the day that I had called 988 and talked to the gentleman on that, I think it was Friday. And then seeked counsel, talked to Robbie, and the gentleman had counseled me, make sure that he's not going to hurt himself or anybody else. Make sure that he's safe. And I had clicked over, he stayed on the phone while I had talked to Robbie for about 30 minutes. I had tried calling Robbie, didn't get a hold of Robbie, didn't know if he was going to call me back because he had already ditched out on going to the doctor and didn't want me asking him about that anymore. So he really just stopped contact with me. So I wasn't sure he was going to call me back. So I called 988 to say, hey, things are escalating. I'm scared. And then, so Robbie called me back in the mid of this conversation with 988, number one. And, oh goodness, I had just I have this all written down at home. I had asked him if he was going to hurt anybody. Actually, you know what? I think I kind of played this, hey, how you doing? Just checking in. I heard that you went bowling and there was an incident at the bowling alley. So can you tell me a little bit about that? And so he went on to say, yeah, these girls came up to me. I could hear them talking about me. I was bowling, minding my own business, and they were talking about my man parts and saying that I was rich. I got tired of it. So I went up to them directly and I said, why are you talking about me? I don't know the exact conversation. He confronted them and they got up and walked away. And so that to him was validation that they were in fact talking about him and that they had walked away. And I had tried to talk with him just saying, hey, do you think that they were scared about your behavior? And that was alarming to them. So they just got up and moved. And he's like, no, you can even ask Hodge. So that's when he had given me Hodgson's number. And I had called Hodgson after I got off the phone with him to confirm, but while I was on the phone with Rob, I got his place of work. I didn't even know where he worked. This is how like distant we had been. So I got his place of work. He gave me Hodgson's number, and I just got information about who he was getting these hearing aids from online, got the name of that, and then did all the research on my own because I didn't want him to become more paranoid. So I called Hodgson and I told him that I was Rob's sister, that I was concerned about his increasing paranoia and if he had seen any of those behaviors. And he said, oh yeah, I've seen these behaviors. That's just Rob. You know, I'm with him all the time. There were people saying things about him when we were working at Main Recycling. I got his back. Don't worry. Everything's under control. I think I had talked to Ryan about it. It was like, well, I tried to ask him not to bring him. I'm like, is it a really good idea to bring him to like the bowling alley and to these places if he's hearing these things? He's like, oh no, I got it under control. We're good. I can control him. And so that was kind of the conversation that we had. At first, it was kind of just like denial, and I'd never talked to this person before. And so I just kind of reported back to Ryan, reported back to my dad. And they weren't really convinced and really trustworthy of that relationship at that time. So it made it really challenging to do that. But he did indeed confirm that he was bowling while this incident happened. And that they got up and walked away, that he's not worried about anything happening.
And he was the only person from the battalion that you or James ever spoke with?
Yes.
No, Captain Reamer never reached out to you?
nope.
Okay.
Right. Was it Uric? I know that he spoke to somebody Uric.
Okay. We'll be with you in just a minute, Katie.
Okay.
No, because we're gonna go on you, Katie, up with the microphone. Just so we can hear you.
So not that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Thank you very much for being here, for your powerful testimony. Thank you for all of you just coming up, just, doing this. So, and appreciate the time and stuff. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I tried to do it in chronological order, and apologize if I bounce over the place a little bit. So when did you first notice that Robbie wasn't Robbie? Like he looks something different?
So that's really interesting. I got the phone call from Ryan to go pick him up, or he picked me up from work one afternoon, May 3rd. Had tried to explain to me that Colby had gone to the resource office
Mhm.
with his mom, and all of that happened. We all know what happened. So we had gotten in the car to go see him.
Mhm.
We had pulled over to try to call Officer Carlton before we had gone to contact Robbie and show up at his house. What was your question? Totally lost.
So
me.
that was, so prior to May, I believe that was around May. So prior to May, you weren't picking up on anything that seemed odd with Robbie?
So looking back, what I was intending to say about that was that he had acted completely normal to me.
Up until that point?
That day.
Okay.
May 3rd, I would have had no idea that there was anything wrong with Robbie. He looked like Robbie. He sounded like Robbie. Ryan and I had done our intervention. We laughed a little bit, but Ryan had done all the investigation. So I knew that Ryan had investigated these accusations and that there was no truth to them. But Robbie acted normal. He acted like himself. Looking back, I remember on Thanksgiving, we had our family gathering and his dog had been there and had attacked the kid's soccer ball. And it wasn't a big deal to us. However, he kind of got into a rage, grabbed the dog, picked her up, put him on her lap, and just was like, and I'm like, it just made me really uncomfortable because I've never seen him act like that before. So that was like, what is going on with his life? I don't know, and then he wasn't there on Christmas.
But you didn't connect that yet until
Right. It
later.
scared me.
Okay.
I remember that it scared me. I was like,
So-
what was that? I was very surprised.
So in May, when Kobe went to resource officers, obviously, it sounds like he had more contact with Robbie to get to that point where he had to make that call. Because he wasn't, like, he was, what happened one time thing is, oh, let's go resource. Sounds like it's been building for Kobe at that point until he said, I gotta go talk to someone.
I'm not sure about that. I know that they stopped spending, Colby chose to stop spending less and less time with that. Mom may know
Okay.
more details
Alright.
on what that relationship looked like.
And prior to that, there was no concern expressed by Kobe to the rest of you that, hey, something's wrong with Dad.
Not to me personally, but others in the
Okay.
family. Yeah.
And he also had the hearing issue, which started beginning of the year. Sounds like before even this May incident. Were you aware, I mean, you helped him do the research, right? But when were you aware that he had a hearing issue?
May issue
also me.
or the hearing aids. He's had a hearing
Did you
issue.
notice that
since-
he was like hard of hearing even?
Yeah, since
Okay.
2015, and it's increasingly been getting
So it's
worse.
been going on for a while.
So what my understanding is what the reason why he got to the hearing aids was because he was hearing people at work
Okay.
say that he was a pedophile
Okay.
and then the size. I talked to him personally about that and talked to about some of the symptoms he was
Mhm.
having regarding those hearing aids on May 3rd. Because
Okay.
Ryan had let me know, I really think it's the hearing aids. They really have a big part to do with this. What else could it be? So the research that we had done in the car
Mhm.
was that you can get over stigmatized, you're relearning and you're processing. Usually you have to go back often to get the setting dialed. None of those things happened with this company because he had received them online. My understanding is that his actual physician would not fit him for hearing aids because of, he had 70% loss and 50% loss, I believe, in each ear. So he wasn't a candidate for hearing aids to begin with, and he got them online.
So he didn't even get a hearing test.
I don't know
Yes,
if this
okay.
company does a hearing test. All I know is that you apply for
Okay.
it, you
As far
meet
as you
with
know,
an
the
audiologist.
Doctor didn't refer him for hearing tests to go through the fitting and that kind of stuff, as far as you know.
I
Okay.
don't know that for sure. I just know he showed up one day with hearing aids.
Okay.
Because he was going to prove, and he was so attached to them.
Okay.
He's like defensive, I guess would be the good word to say.
And after the Kobe went to the school and talked to Resource and they tried to intervene,
Mhm.
did you, and that's when you learn of what's going on. Did you folks try to meet as a group to say, hey, what's going on with, Robbie? And I also, having said that, I know there was a concern by Kobe and Carla that if they didn't want him to know they went to the police because they worry that this may escalate and make him more upset and things like that.
Yes, initially
Uh-huh.
in May, that was the request
Okay.
that Ryan come grab me and we go over together
Okay.
where he was feeling paranoid. I do not believe that is what happened in September with Ryan in Schofield. I think that was a different
Okay.
scenario. I don't know enough details to
Okay.
know, but initially, yes, Carlton had worked with Cara,
Mhm.
Colby, and Ryan to come up with the least invasive plan to discover, I guess, maybe that was the time that Robbie had gone to the farm to
Mhm.
grab the guns.
Okay.
And so that was concerning.
When did it happen again? Remind me, the farm?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. No, the guns, the farm, you said.
I believe prior to that is when Colby reported that
Okay.
he was concerned because his
Okay.
dad had gone to the farm to pick up the
All right.
guns.
And then from May to roughly July, when he was hospitalized in New York, did you notice, was he okay? Or was he noticing that increasingly seeing this kind of paranoid behavior and things like that?
Yeah, so I had a few interactions with him, just checking in with him. The ones that I can think of off the top of my head would be June 3rd after the bowling alley incident. July, my mom called me mid-July and said, hey, Robbie's not working today. My understanding is that he quit his job. And I was like, did he quit or did he get fired? Because at that point I had already known that I had talked to his manager
Mhm.
about some of the concerns, and he was like, oh, I didn't know that. And then I was like, oh, great. So now he's gonna get fired on top of all this other stuff. And Robbie, from my understanding, actually did quit. So I found a reason to call Robbie in July, just to
Mhm.
say, hey, how are things going? And he's like, he didn't say anything about it. He was like, good, just going fishing. So like you're having a conversation with a normal person. It wasn't until my aunt's wedding, so no, September 23rd, that he messaged me back something along the lines of, if you really cared about me, you would find these effing people online who are saying
No,
these things.
September, you said.
That was September.
Okay.
He didn't reach out to me. I tried calling him while he was in New York and he didn't answer the call. And when I learned that Hodgson had gone to pick him up, I reached out to him via text
Mhm.
again on August 6th, just saying, hey, I'm here. When you get settled in, reach out. I'd love to hear about your experience and what your plan is.
Okay. Were you, how were you made aware that he went to, how, anyone of you were made aware that he went to the hospital in New York in around July? And did the hospital try to get hold of you, by any of you?
So for me, no, I did not have any personal contact with the hospital. My brother Ryan called me and told me about what happened. I then talked to my father about it, saying he told me that somebody called him. Oops, sorry. My dad then gave the message to Ryan for Ryan to deal with.
Mhm.
And so Ryan was left holding and making the decisions regarding what to do. Robbie did call my mom and my dad, and I believe Colby, had all talked to him while he was in the hospital, but he didn't make it clear, and the military did not make it clear that he had gone from Keller to Four Winds.
Oh, so you didn't know where he was?
No.
Okay.
No.
But it's really just talking to him, but no hospital staff to any member.
My mom,
Oh, your mom, okay.
yeah, who was hospitalized in May and wasn't aware of any of this until June because we were worried about
Mhm.
her health, had come up with a treatment plan with Robbie, a psychiatrist and a counselor, that he was going to come home and she was going to check in on him.
Okay. And were you, when he left, were you made aware by anybody, including mom, of the discharge plan in terms of what he needed to do and also, the video folks that he was supposed to see? Were you aware of any of that?
So we were really surprised that he had been released. Our thought was that it was going to be 30 days in the treatment center.
Mhm.
And he was released the next day after that call with my mom.
Who told you it was 30 days?
I believe it was the treatment plan that he was going to be in there for 30 days. And
Right.
then
Yeah, how was that
My
communicated
mom.
to you? Oh, your mom, okay,
Mhm.
all right. And there's a lot of references along that point, both the hospital and also military, about the guns. Did anyone reach out to you and say, hey, as part of the plan, we have to have you remove the guns?
No, no. Hodgson had told me when I spoke to him a few months ago that he did go to my father and tell my father that he needed to remove the guns. When he
Mhm.
went there to either get his phone number for the command to reach him or the hospital to reach him. And he claims that he told my dad that at that point. My dad did not put a lot of credit into Hodgson. He's had some issues in his past, like we all have. And so he didn't take that probably as serious as it was at the time,
Mhm.
given the deliverer.
Okay, and so there's no one to really actually confirm, hey, yes, you did take the guns or anything like that. Nothing happened like that. No communication. Okay. And how was he after he came home? Was he like, looked the same as he was before you went in or looked
No.
worse?
I didn't see him
Oh,
at all.
Okay,
I had not seen him again,
Okay.
just text messages
Okay.
that I've reached out to him and then only twice had he responded back to me, and those I could tell
And
that
is that-
he has declined.
and is that not normal for him to respond only twice? Or is he someone who usually responds pretty quickly when everything?
He'll respond to
Oh,
me,
okay.
yeah, when we text, but like we haven't even been to, we see each other, ever since our kids have kind of like gone to
Yeah.
middle school.
Yeah.
We've lost connection. We always used to get together and hang out at mom and dad's with all the kids. And then once school started,
Okay.
sports started. So it's really just been Christmas, Thanksgiving. And if we're both at mom and dad's at the
Okay.
same time, I mean, he was doing stuff for my parents all the time.
Okay.
So when I was there, he was there. So
And in terms of September contact with Sergeant Schofield, who actually did talk to him?
There's
the family?
video footage of him going to talk to my father
Mhm.
briefly. And then Ryan had talked to him. I am not sure of the extent of all of that, but he did call him by phone.
Okay. And you're aware of that attempt to make contact with him?
Yes,
Okay,
from Ryan.
from Ryan, but you
Mhm.
never heard from,
Schofield,
okay.
yeah.
And then again, you didn't hear anything from the Army at that point about any concerns they had?
I haven't heard I didn't hear anything until 2 weeks after the shooting from the Army.
Okay. And I say you, I mean, like anyone in the family, so I apologize.
Oh.
Okay.
Not that I
Um,
know.
And yeah.
There was a person that reached out to my father, benefits wise, like maybe like 3 days after.
Okay.
But that was it.
Okay.
That we know of.
Now, did anyone beside, well, you spoke to 988 people, but did anyone said, hey, if you feel so bad, you can call a crisis team locally to have them come see him or take him to emergency room? I know you made some reference, we want to avoid that, but still, was that guidance given by anyone at any point?
No, I had asked them if I could blue paper him and they had said that I could not because he hadn't threatened to hurt himself or anybody else.
Who's they?
Well, that was April.
Oh,
The
for
988.
988. So they
Yep,
said you had no grounds to blue
blue
paper?
paper, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good morning again, and thanks for being here. And unfortunately, the more questions my colleagues ask, the more questions I come up with. So I'm going to try to keep this limited, but I also want to start off by asking your husband one quick question,
Mhm.
which is after you had this encounter with the deputy you believed to be Schofield out on, that was on Meadow Road
Yes,
near your parents' house? I mean, your
Here,
in-laws' house?
right across the street from the house.
And
Pull the microphone over to me.
Yes, it was right at their house across the street. I was also posting around the farm.
Right.
There was areas.
So after that interaction with him, did you make any kind of complaint to the sheriff of Saginaw County about his behavior?
To the sheriff department itself, no,
To anybody above Schofield's level?
no, I did not.
Okay. Because your depiction of it is certainly not flattering to him. So it's been many months now, but maybe it's still worthwhile making a complaint if you choose to do so. But getting back to Nicole, because I think you've had way more interactions here. Did you ever speak to anybody from the military investigation side in the days right after the shootings?
Not the criminal investigation side. I've never spoken to anybody from the criminal side. The gentleman, the colonel from the suicide investigative team had reached out to me, and that's who I've been in contact with.
And was that right after the October, or was that not until like early this year?
That was right in October. He was trying to reach out to Ryan, but he had gone around to do the investigation on the base. And so had tried to contact somebody in the family, and I was willing to talk to him.
And this is a person who identified himself as a suicide investigator.
Yeah.
He was not involved in any other aspect of the
Right.
Army's.
That my understanding is there's a criminal investigation and a suicide
I
investigation.
see. Now, you said earlier that some investigation confirmed that your brother had been harassed at work.
Yes.
Who did that investigation?
I do not know who did that investigation, probably the criminal investigators or maybe the suicide investigators. They could not share the information with me that they had found, but they had given me that insight when I was there, that it had been, they have found that through their investigation that he had been harassed. And then Sean Hodgson had also told me that there was, that's what the guys do there. There's a couple of older gentlemen that will just screen people's names. There's a lot of criminals who work there.
And this is, excuse me, this is Main Recycling.
Main Recycling, yeah,
But your brother resigned from there
in July.
in July of last year. And so in the spring of last year, you and Ryan did go meet with your brother, Robbie, to try to address what Colby and Kara had brought up. Is that right?
Yep, May 3rd.
And is it correct that when you went there to meet with him, he met you at the door holding a gun in his hand?
Yes, he had.
And was that very disturbing behavior to you?
To me, yes, because I do not associate with guns. So he didn't hold it to me. We tried to, which I think was really stupid, obviously now, but we didn't want to call him to have him say, don't come over. We were kind of taking a chance. We didn't know if he was even at work. So when we knocked on the door, he had the gun in his hand up against the wall like this, I believe. And then once he saw it was me, he kicked the door open and then held it behind his back and moved it around his body as he walked to the bedroom. Went to the bedroom, probably put it away, and then came back and just kind of kicked back in the chair.
But even after that disturbing beginning, did you and Ryan have a productive conversation with him?
Yeah. I mean, it was a really, I mean, we laughed. We cried.
And you understood that somehow or other Ryan, I guess, was going to help get his firearms taken away or controlled or something like that?
That, not at that time, no,
No.
no. And
But-
so he had like a handgun. I don't know what. I guess I didn't realize how many firearms our family had. So no, we didn't talk about that at that time at all. We had gone there to just, hey, you're losing a lot of weight. You know, these things Ryan wanted to just let him know that he had reached out to the grocery store and to Joey Walker. And then there was another place. Oh, I guess we just confirmed
So the
with
grocery store was Getchell's in Litchfield?
Gowell's, yeah.
Gowell's, I'm
Yep,
sorry.
he had
Gowell's.
gone there to just say, hey, do you know this person? They were like, no, we don't know this person. And just to kind of make sure that what these things are happening, because he went to Joey and Joey said, listen, I'm not saying anything about him. If he was gay, if he was this, I don't care. You know, my job is to serve beer and have a good time. So please tell him to come back, enjoy this time here, bring him in, let's talk it out.
And Joey Walker is the manager at Schmenge's,
Yes, sir.
who died on the 25th.
Yes, sir.
But your brother agreed that he would start some kind of program when you met with him?
Yeah, so we really try to help him understand without putting him under attack that he may have a problem. And Robbie just kept saying, I'm not effing crazy. I'm not crazy. This stuff is really happening. So that was really hard. And so we were trying to be respectful. I mean, this is my big brother that I'm talking to, and he's sounding like himself. He's looking like himself. I know that he had lost weight, but I'm like, you know, we're all 15 months apart. We're pretty close in our childhood. So it was really hard. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I faced was, not being able to tell him that this is not real, you know, telling him, you know, I tried both. I tried, you know, Rob, this doesn't make sense. If you think about this way, I mean, let's walk through this. And that's kind of what we did that first night until later, like, there is nothing happening. There's nothing online. I've checked, you know, we sat there and we looked up on the sex offender registry. And I didn't know at the time that when you put in a name on the sex offender registry, you have to expand the search. So like within the 15 months, I thought it was like the whole state of Maine. So like if you put in a name and it comes up that it's the whole state, and it really is just like a 15-mile radius unless you expand that search or you change the county.
So it was only much later that you found out there was actually another Robert Card who was on the registry but lived outside that radius?
Outside of that radius, yeah, and that was on October 25th, yeah.
All right, now, you said earlier that June 3rd is when you called the hotline,
Yep,
and that was
and June
a
30th.
result of some incident at the bowling alley?
Yes.
What was that?
He had approached two women, that he felt like
Oh,
were
okay.
talking.
I'm sorry. I think you said that already and I
That's okay. I'm happy
misheard
to
exactly what
clarify.
that was. But did either you or Ryan reach out to the Deputy Carlton at Saginaw to talk to him about that new information? if you know?
I believe Ryan did. I know that I didn't. I was having a hard time following along who the contacts were because we were talking about like Yurks and all these other police officers that were reservists. But that night, somebody told Carlton that he answered the door with a gun.
No, I meant more in relationship to the bowling alley event.
Oh,
There was further
sorry.
reaching out, because we've had testimony from various people, but they don't all say the same thing, so it's
Yeah,
sometimes
no,
very hard to follow.
No, I did not reach out to anybody regarding the police department at that time. I was just investigating. I reached out to the two caseworker. I called 98 that Friday. And then I called with my mom on Saturday. On that Friday, I called his boss, Audacious, and talked to Marianne there. And then I talked to Hodgson on Friday.
Okay. But you never met Hodgson before 2023?
No.
And did you know he lived with Robbie for a few months in 2022?
I had learned that from my father and brother, yeah,
Okay,
brother Ryan.
sorry. I've run out of questions.
No.
Thank you.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for both for coming.
My pleasure.
You mentioned that before May, Robert Card seemed completely normal to you. Now, tell us what he was like for the 5 years before.
So I've learned through investigating that there were more aggressive behaviors in the prior 5 years, not as intense. You know, my husband can attest to that because like I did the girl stuff during, I used to say the girl stuff. I did different things during our family events. He talked to Robbie mostly during those events, but before I couldn't really, he seemed normal to me besides the Thanksgiving with the dog. That was upsetting to me. Actually, I think the 2 years before that, he got really mad at Colby for getting the four-wheeler stuck and usually that would have been like, yay, an adventure, you know, and he was a little annoyed by that. I'm like, that's a little harsh. But I didn't recognize anything concerning in his behavior, I guess, other than those two things. However, from other family members, there was things that came up that I hadn't been aware of. I'll let them speak for, but I did find it strange that when I realized that Ryan and Robbie hadn't been hanging out as much because they had always spent a lot of time together. I mean, the kids call each other like uncle, daddy, because they were together so much. It was like when they needed one of them, it was like uncle or daddy, if someone was going to respond. And but I didn't really notice a lot of changes. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. I mean, my parents' dog died and he had contacted me, hey, where'd you get your dog? I want to get mom one for a surprise. I mean, all of those things, he'd pick mom up, bring her to meals. He'd help dad mow lawns. So I think looking back, it was like nothing disturbing. When we spent more time together, he was always doing things. I mean, he helped me raise my two oldest children. We would spend time together doing like building his house, doing activities like that. We would go fishing on his boat. You know, he would always try to take the nieces or nephews to take turns to do those types of things. So this was a far call from who he was originally, yeah. But when it started, I don't know. When I talked to Hodgson, you know, it's a very fine line to talk about when you're talking about brain injury among soldiers who may have been beside them while these injuries occurred. And I have been assured through Dr. McKee that not every soldier is going to have the same effects. So I don't want to instill fear into soldiers
Right.
who have had trainings of concern. But he didn't, he told me originally, no, your brother did not have a brain injury. Your brother did not have a brain injury. There's no way. There's no way. And I said, well, I've only seen him get mad at two people in his life, or three people, my mom, my brother, and his ex-wife. And so it was really hard for me to think that. And he was like, oh my gosh, the last couple years, we've been going to bars and getting in fights, and, you know, I'm having to hold him back all the time. And it's like, that was really surprising to me, that that was the kind of life that he had been living out in, you know, on his drills and stuff, because he's always been really responsible. So that's where I think that maybe some of this anger and rage control has been intensifying through his withdrawal of the family over the past couple of years. It's hard to tell. But even with the reservist that he had served with, it sounds like his behavior was concerning enough for them to report it
Right.
in June. That was obviously more intense than what they may have experienced 2 years ago. So they may be a better guide on the changes that he's seen,
Okay.
but I don't know if that answered your
Can-
question. Sorry.
Can you pinpoint the time in your own mind when you began to think that he was a danger to himself or others?
My first concern was June, when he had told me that if people didn't stop talking about him, he was gonna punch him in the face. And I said, Robbie, you know, you can't say things like that. Are you really? And he's like, no, I'm not really going to. He's like, but I can't go anywhere, Nikki. They're saying this about me everywhere I go.
And that was the first time that you really began to think he was a threat to himself or others?
I thought he could punch somebody.
Okay.
I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined the act that he did. No, I never thought even, so in November, sorry, September and October, the last two text messages that I recognized that he had declined, I thought he was going to commit suicide.
Right.
I grieved him for that loss. I thought that's how we were gonna lose him.
Do you know how many guns he had, or did you know at that time how many guns he had?
No. I don't even know how many, yeah, guns our family had. I've never been comfortable with guns. The condition was when the kids were there, they locked them up and they had a safe. And that's all we really talked about. My dad used to like load up the bullets and stuff when we were kids and everything as like a hobby, but I had no idea.
And the safe was,
I'm sorry. I did know that a couple years ago, he got a scope for a gun, and my dad bought guns for both my brothers for Christmas. Was that what, 2 years ago? Maybe 3 years ago. But that's all I really know about that.
and that gun safe was where?
So I knew about the gun safe that was in my parents' house.
Okay.
I didn't
and
know of
Do you
one.
know who had a key to it?
Probably Robbie and Ryan and my dad.
I just want to make sure it's clear.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, did any member of the Card family ever tell law enforcement that those guns had been removed from Robert Card's house?
No.
Did
Ryan was
any-
very clear to me that he couldn't get them that day and that he asked my dad to go over. So no.
And did any member of the Card family tell the Army Reserve that those guns had been removed from the house, from Robert Card's house?
I don't know who spoke to the Army Reserve in my family.
And just finally, about your mother, she was in contact with the hospital in New York,
Yes.
and she was the only person from the family who was in touch with the hospital directly?
The hospital directly, yep.
And she agreed to monitor him or visit him?
Yes.
Can
She
you-
can't even take care of herself with the health issues that she faces.
Is she mobile?
Not at the time she wasn't, because she had diabetes and just lost a toe. And we're facing that same battle now.
Okay, so when you say she's not able to care for herself, what do you mean?
She has diabetes, liver failure, and kidney failure.
Okay. I have nothing further, thank you.
I have just a question that was sort of follows up on what Mr. Hollander was just asking you. I've got the impression from listening to you and others that when any effort to speak to Robbie and try to explain to him, this is not real, it's not happening. In other words, I don't believe what you're telling me. The result was that he withdrew from you. Is that basically correct?
Yeah, the reason why Ryan brought me there on May 3rd is because Robbie had already withdrew from him and he wasn't sure he was gonna let him in. The text that he was sending him was, "You've abandoned me. How could you not stop playing cornhole? You're choosing them over me. I can't believe you're not on my side. I thought we were a brother." You know, those were the messages. So Ryan's relationship with Rob had been estranged since I came in the picture May 3rd. That's why Ryan brought me in, is because he no longer could communicate with Robbie.
And eventually your relationship became strained I got the impression from listening to others and you that your mother was the one who maintained a relationship with Robbie.
For the longest. Yeah, my dad had tried to too. When he went over to get the guns, Robbie had become paranoid and said, you know, tell me where this stuff online is.
Right.
And my dad's like, I was hoping you could tell me. The sheriff was by the house last week and I want to know what's going on. And he says, you know, got mad at him and he went along the lines, just go. You're just like the rest of them, just go, leave.
Apparently he directed the hospital towards your mother in New York. And that she eventually became sort of the contact person for the hospital and making arrangements for the discharge from the hospital and his placement back home.
Yes.
And what you've just said about her health indicates that she was not an ideal person for that role.
No, and the truth is that she, you know, she was like, oh, I should have, as soon as she called me, she was like, I should have tape recorded it because I can't remember, you know, her memory isn't there as much. Well,
Is she
I see.
capable of taking care of her own medications?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes not.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Sure.
I believe that we've concluded with you two, and obviously we've said this several times. We thank you for hearing.
My pleasure.
It's
Thank you
been-
for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And we will continue on with Carol Lamb at this point. The former wife of Robbie Card. You can introduce yourself and once again, take your time. It's difficult stuff.
My name is Cara Lamb. I am Rob Card's, I knew him as Rob Card's ex-wife. And we shared our son, Colby, who is just turned 19. And when I say shared, I mean that yesterday was our 17th divorce anniversary date. I have known this family longer than my son's been alive. I am incredibly grateful that this family was willing to listen to me and Colby when on May 3rd, you know, when we made a decision on what to do for his father, because I had no contact or communication with my ex-husband unless he deemed it necessary, I guess I'll say. There was no love shared there. It took all of those 17 years and then some for a lot of the hate and animosity and anger that splitting a family up creates. For that to not be first and foremost for either of us in our daily lives, I think it's fair to say. Today, and every day I'm gonna just be here for my kid. He's lost his father. He lost his dad before October 25th for sure. I'm not nearly as well written as these two, so this notebook contains a lot of rants and stuff that I've just not been able to put together in a way that's as eloquent as them. I'm just gonna really work hard at not swearing out loud and try and give you a little bit of my side of it. Colby's not here because he shouldn't have to be. He came to me a few days before May 3rd. Which is why I took it so seriously. He told me he was worried for his father's mental health, that he was displaying behaviors that he then explained to me that were really making him nervous. And as his mom, my first reaction was to be aggressive about it. And yet, to me, that meant, what do we do? Do we call the cops? My next reaction to that question is, well, of course not. It's Rob. He's gonna not be thrilled if cops show up in his driveway. He's also potentially gonna take this out on Colby if he knows that Colby has come to me to talk about his father. Colby had been living solely with us for at least 6 months at that point, if not longer. You know, I can't give you specific dates and stuff like that outside of this beginning for me on May 3rd, essentially. Because I wasn't a part of that half of his life. That half of my son's life was his dad's time. And over all of the years, we sacrificed, both of us sacrificed to try and make sure that that kid got family time on either side, that he was a part of an amazing family of farmers and got to spend as much time with his cousins as possible. Their traditions were something that weren't a part of my family life, essentially. There were no other grandkids on that side, on our side. So it was great for Colby to get to go spend every holiday with his cousins. I was always rather resentful, but it seemed like the right thing to do. I had very little knowledge of what was going on in Rob's personal life. I've known since the courts assigned it that, you know, Rob was responsible for Colby's health insurance. We changed that in a divorce amendment years ago. I still to this day was never given a health insurance card for Colby, access to any policy, anything along those lines. You know, that's the level of silence that I received as a co-parent from the other one. I took it incredibly seriously when Colby came to me with his concerns for his dad. He had not been living there. They had just been spending time together, hanging out when they had time. Colby worked as well as going to school. He was a senior in high school at that point. And he came to me and said, you know, I do not feel comfortable. I don't want to go over to dad's anymore. You know, he was maybe spending a night every week or two at his dad's house, or he would be hanging out with his buddy who lived essentially next door. And he would end up staying there instead. Colby didn't tell me a lot of the things, which is not abnormal. You know, things leading up to him saying, I'm concerned about my dad, you know, like him having very nasty, strong vocal opinions about friends, girlfriends, ways of life, stuff like that. And so he messaged me one night and said, hey, do you mind? It was a Friday night. Normally he'd be up in Bowdoin at his dad's. Hey, do you mind if I stay at the house tonight? I don't want to go to dad's. And I said, of course. And the next morning, he was willing to talk a little bit about why. You know, he mentioned a situation where he'd gone to pick up his fishing gear with his buddy at his dad's house on the way to the pond, and that his dad had just met them in the driveway in an absolute rage about, you know, who Colby wanted to date and about Colby being in on it and against him, and, you know, walking away from his dad essentially. Colby was nervous and felt threatened to an extent by his own father. And that's not a normal behavior, I will tell you. It doesn't surprise me one bit that this is the first I'm hearing about Rob's mom being the one who was in charge of his care from this hospital. Doesn't surprise me one bit that that would be the situation that Rob would make sure would happen. That was his family member. That was his nurturing mom. They had a relationship unique to the rest of the family, I would say. He put all of his trust in her. And at that point, he had isolated everyone else and was continually doing so. He'd done that to Colby. Colby didn't live with his dad because his dad asked him to give up his room at their home because he had a friend that was in need of a place to stay. And okay, well, that's okay. We support taking care of one another in times of need. We have a place for Colby to be, of course. You know, it wasn't anybody trying to take his dad out of his life or do anything along those lines. And it's why the best solution I could come up with on May 3rd was, why don't we go talk to our resource officer at the high school and ask them, what do we do? If I call the cops right now and say, I'm concerned about the welfare of my ex-husband, who I don't speak with ever, that means that they're going to essentially talk to Colby and then go to Rob and say, your son's really concerned about your welfare. We were well beyond that being any effective or reasonable tool to use. It felt like I was taking him and taking this problem to the people that could direct us to the appropriate place. I'm not sure that we have an appropriate place for those inappropriate questions. And if I can't get anything else out but this, that's the whole point of this. Sitting here and exposing more of ourselves. You know, trying to protect my son and all of this. It all has to matter. This. There's gonna be a next time. In some capacity. Whether it's somebody going to ask for help because they're concerned for somebody that they care about, or they've had a scenario happen that they're worried about somebody's mental health. What's the answer gonna be the next time? What is going to be said to them? Because what was said to us was, well, there's only so much you can do. Really, you know, our hands are kind of tied. He hasn't directly threatened you. He hasn't physically laid his hands on you. He hasn't pointed a gun at you. Well, he wouldn't have. It didn't mean that the concerns that my son brought to me were not incredibly valid. I thought that maybe the worst thing, the worst response with our concern would be to have the police show up at his house. I was concerned for Colby's interaction and relationship with his dad, but at that point, Colby was letting go of his relationship with his dad.
You have disrupted your whole thing by coughing, so I'll cough in the hall for a minute. Be back. Keep right on.
Rob had already begun pushing the people that were close to him in his life away. He was feeling attacked by everybody, including his 17-year-old kid who did similar things like Nikki, you know, tried to reason with him in those moments that he witnessed, being at the hardware store, buying stuff for fishing or for working on the house together, and being in aisle 1 at Home Depot and Rob being absolutely dead sure that the old couple down on aisle 11, half a mile away, are saying very specific things about him and that he can hear it while he's standing next to Colby. And Colby acknowledging that, no, they're not talking about you. They're not saying this, Dad. And that turning into anger from his dad towards him. I keep wondering if the right thing to do would have been to say, damn it all, damn everybody's feelings and the repercussions and the fallout after, go scream to the police. What do we have to do? How much has to be said to find a way through this absolute mess that we've seemed to have created in helping people that need help but won't take it? And Nikki said that it seems like the military, it would have been a different story for communication between us if he had a wife, if he had, if there was a spouse at home. And I absolutely agree with that. The military would have had that direct contact, whereas Colby was a minor, so he hasn't actually been acknowledged as, next of kin or anything like that by the Army. Except them confusing us by saying it's either Robert Senior or it's Colby Card. There are two different lives that none of us really know very much about when push comes to shove. Rob was a really private person, at least in my experience. He was also a really good dad. He was there for Colby. He was there for his nieces and his nephews and his parents and his siblings and his friends. When we went to the school, we were there to figure out how to get him help, not how to get him into trouble. We would have done that if we had been told that that's what we needed to do. I don't want this to be about pointing fingers and blame and defending ourselves or him or all of this. We did meet privately with the commission months ago. It was right after Christmas. And I'll tell you that after watching Reamer and Moat, I'm not gonna even attempt to use their titles, and Schofield and the state police and everybody that's been up here who are meant to be our leaders, who are running for sheriff's office. I don't want to point my finger at any of them and say that this is on them, because I firmly believe that it's on all of us from this point forward. And I'm his ex-wife and he was not a fan of me, but it's on me too, to make sure that the next time somebody needs to get help for someone, that we do better than we did this time round. And when our lives and so many other lives have been just altered forever, it's pretty disheartening to see the people that think they deserve to be in charge and are in charge and are leading these groups that you're gonna go ask for help. Sorry, but anybody who can admit that we have a whole bunch of work to do and lessons to learn within ourselves and our jobs and our communities, they have no business being in a leadership role. I'm appalled at people in charge defending themselves against a commission that's being collecting information about a tragedy, and that they're trying to put focus other places. I'm pretty, I've tried very hard to be as polite as I'm capable. But I feel like I have to take a moment and say that if we get another Army recruiter reaching out to me or my son, asking why there's been a lapse in his interest in serving, my next response is not going to be polite. I have received in the last 3 weeks, 2 attempts from local recruiting offices looking for Colby Card. Is this Colby Card? No, it's his mom. How can I help you? During all of this, we've had people reaching out to us in every avenue possible and sifting through what's media, what's garbage, what's somebody chasing a story, what is real coming from the military, which has been very little. We don't know how to respond to everybody, but we have to respond and make sure that we're not missing steps here. Obviously, to me, that says that the military is missing some serious steps. When the Topsom recruiting office is calling, looking for my kid with no frame of what they're asking and who they're asking it from. And I know we're all trying to figure this out, but this is something that should be talked about. It's why we're here in front of you. This is something that it has to be talked about between all of us. It's the only way forward. It's the only right thing to do, to share as much as we're able to with the victims and their families. It didn't feel safe or right to do that when we met after Christmas, to do this publicly. I didn't want to put Colby through that. He doesn't want to go through it. He shouldn't have to. He did everything and then some that he should have and could have. And I'm beyond proud of my kid. But